Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another episode where Fernando and I take you through the cavernous dungeon of the Yavanajataka. I think this
Some
is,
D&D here.
yes, in D&D. I'm a paladin. I don't know what you
I've
are.
never played that because
Oh,
that's for nerds. That's for nerds.
um,
Did you play
anyway,
Magic? Did you play? You
oh
played
man, I
Magic.
played all this stuff:
You're a nerd.
Magic,
Yeah,
D and
you're a nerd.
D, Mage Knights,
Yeah, you're a
Warhammer,
nerd. I was
Warcraft.
never a nerd. I was a weirdo. So yeah.
Okay, a little different, but yeah. So we're going to be going through chapters 58 through I think 63, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, and these are some weird chapters. Well,
Well,
actually,
there's the
the first
weird
couple
chapter.
are yeah, the
It's,
first couple are pretty straightforward, and then there's a really weird chapter
we're
60.
still talking about horror. Just let
Yeah,
people
we're
know
still
that.
talking about Prashna horary questions, right? So, all right, I'm going to share the screen and
And I just wanted to add
jump
something
right
that
in.
usually, a lot of Yotishis say that Indian astrology is like very old and they usually rely upon pseudoepigrapha like Hellenistic astrology used to do instead of, Asclepius or Hermes Trismegisto
Uh-huh.
or Petrosiris. They quote, Saptarichis or they quote Prasha or Jaimini. But, just the fact that this is the oldest Yotish text in that we can confirm, or at least that
Yeah, for
academic
now it is
confirm
until
today
we
it is,
find something
and
else
it
and
yeah, and
translate
it has horror in it, which is a very modern. I mean, it's not modern, but it's like the newest
comparatively.
development. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like the newest development in astrological approaches or
yeah,
astrological or horoscopic astrological usage. That entails that this written material is not as old as some people want to perceive, or at least the basis of the Jyotish as the seventh, the sixth, no, the sixth, I'm sorry, the sixth Vedanga, right? The sixth limb of the Vedas. You see that it's not that old, and at the
yeah.
same time, just by having this horary material, which in a sense is kind of different to the other ones,
Well,
of the
and
other chapters,
yeah, it's way different.
it
Yeah.
entails that this is not as old as some people want to perceive it is, and that's not bad. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's something good
Well,
either. It's
and
just something that it's real, and people have to see
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and the thing is Vedanga Jyotish is much different than Jyotish as we practice it
Correct. Yeah, and
now, or
that's
even for
another
the
thing.
last couple thousand years, because Vedanga
Yes,
Jyotish was mainly about using the moon's movement through
electional. Yeah,
unequal nakshatras
yeah,
based on the naked eye, and using it to elect auspicious times to do
exactly,
religious
exactly,
rituals or to get
exactly.
married or to so it and also there may
And
have.
that's basically the original astrology of India.
Yeah,
That's
and astrology
the
was
original
originally
Jyotish.
used for the kingdom, for the community, or for like a king or wealthy,
For
powerful
Vedic
individual.
rituals. I mean,
Yeah,
Vedic rituals are very, very specific.
but even in like Babylon and stuff, like you wouldn't really be reading the stars for like the average person. You'd be
Yeah,
reading it for the king because the king as a god
is the state
is
exactly?
the state. So the king and his fate and thus the empire's fate is what's important. So, today we live in a world where, and this is kind of I'll go a little off topic for a moment, but Dane Ridyar talks about how, like, in terms of consciousness, like ever since the heliocentric revolution, right, so to speak, of heliocentrism, it's also correlated with like a marked rise in individualism where everybody is now a king unto their own, like, little tiny state. So we live in a world where
That's very beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, so we live in a strange world where everyone believes they're an individual. But as Dane Ridyar rightly points out, people are potentially individuals. Most people
Yeah.
follow something in mass. They don't think for themselves. They identify through external things, external movements. They're not really thinking and being on an individual level. So everyone is potentially a sun in their own solar system.
Yeah. And
But
I can add to that Rudyard quote, which is very nice, with a quote from Julius Evola where he kind of differentiates what an individual is from a person. And what you're describing through that Rudyard quote is
yeah,
basically an individual. A person would be somebody who really takes responsibility of his own persona, and becomes what he has to become, and tries to aspire to do whatever he has to do in the world. So yeah,
Okay.
and it's a shame, and we're diverting from topic, but these chapters are not that long, so it's not that important. But people in the school system today, it is not taught how revolutionary was this implementation of the heliocentric system.
Yeah, it was very revolutionary.
And
Absolutely.
people don't understand how that really like took the rug out from the feet. Pulled the rug
pulled the rug out from under the feet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it changed everything. It changed the philosophy of how people saw the world
and how they saw themselves in it.
Yeah, exactly. Because back then the persona, the human, was really the center of creation in relationship to God. And by putting, and you have the thing of the chain of being and the correspondences and all that. And by pulling that rug out, you're just like an electron. You're just something that is just a part of something much bigger. And the reason of life, the reasons why we were as we were just they evaporated. Our connection to the whole, connection to God, as we understood them as Westerners,
right? And what Dane Revere points out as well is that like we, in many respects, like what we have today constitutes a failure of people to basically meet holistically like the mass change in consciousness. And so basically in his book, The Sun is Also a Star, which is about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but it's much more than that. He says that basically the doors are open now for each person to become more than man, basically to realize their relationship to the greater whole in a galactic sense, right? The sun is also a star related to other stars, and the realm of stars is metaphorically the realm of souls, even in the old cosmology of the eighth sphere, right? So the idea is that, like, in a sense, while we have a
yes, but the sun was the fourth sphere,
right? But when we have but it was always the middle as well.
Yeah.
When we have a destruction of basically this old way of thinking and being, it opens the potential for a higher way of being and thinking, but it also opens the potential for what we have mostly today, which is a less holistic, more fragmented, more mentally unstable way.
I would say the latter.
yeah, absolutely. But
I don't necessarily agree with Rudyard there, but I would definitely agree with the latter.
Yeah, it's about spiritual potential, though. It's kind of going back to like what the Advaita Vedantas say, where it's like do away with like, and it's really radical stuff where Dattatreya is like, there are no holy scriptures, there are no there are no like sacred religions or anything. There's just Brahman, and you are Brahman. And so in a sense, that revelation is more open today than it's ever been in the past, but people are not taking that opportunity because we still have many, many ghosts that we're fighting and many things that we have not handled well. And so we have a very schizophrenic reality today. But anyway, I don't know. We could make a whole video on that. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah, let's go to chapter 58.
Yeah, let's go to chapter 58. Cool, guys. So a little bonus for those of you watching. Hopefully it was interesting. Anyway, so this is just on in questions in horary charts, just what the sign rising means. That's all it is. It's very straightforward.
Yeah, and Sfudisvaya is also saying about things someone is thinking by the Lagna in the Prashna.
Right, exactly. So Aries is in the Lagna in the Prajna chart.
Let's do that. I mean, let's use mine. I mean,
oh, you mean your birth chart instead?
No, a horary. I mean,
horary. Great. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I mean, but it's my location.
I was thinking of doing that. So yeah, let's do it. Cool.
My location is Gemini right now.
Right. So if Gemini is in the ascendant, he is thinking of quarrels with his enemies, the illness of his son, having intercourse with a good woman, attending on saints, or of variegated missiles of crafts or of traditions. So we are thinking about traditions, right? We're having a philosophical Gemini kind of discussion, right? Where Gemini is one of the signs that deals with, Shruti and sacred knowledge and stuff like that. As it says here, Shruti, So that applies very well, I think, to our, we're having a conversation.
And believe it or not, I mean,
Cool.
we were thinking about quarrels with his enemies. I mean, we were thinking about different perspectives of the world as we were talking about heliocentrism and geocentrism.
Yes, that's true. That's definitely true. And
we were thinking also about the illness of sons in terms of how us as children of those people that came before us are kind of sick due to that reinterpretation.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking about the sex I had last night with 3 women. So yeah, that's also there. So
okay, yeah.
I'm a virgin. Okay, let's
All right. So, this is pretty straightforward. You'll find the same themes enumerated earlier in the text on the signs, enumerated here, slightly different, obviously, slightly simpler, and so on. So,
and 59, we get thoughts by Navamsa, Drekana, and D12. Once again, we're using this type of differentiation that Sfudisvaya has delineated in previous chapters of identifying the overall dignity of the chart. So first by the Drekana, then by the D9, and then by the D12. So
I
just
want to say real quick too, like in 13 here of the previous chapter, he sets up chapter 59, and he says that basically, if you know if you pay attention to the Decan, the Navamsa, and the Dwadasamsa, like I guess in the ascending sign only, you can get quite a lot out of that. And as we saw earlier in the text, he seems to indicate that if the Lord of the Dwadasamsa or the Decan or the Hora or the Navamsa is strong and aspecting the ascendant, let's say in this case, then you want to like pay more attention to like that. So if it was the Navamsa Lord, you might pay more attention to the Navamsa and how it mixes with the sign rising, and then where that Navamsa Lord is, and you might get quite a lot out of that. So what's happening in your chart that you just drew?
Okay, so we're gonna see the D3 right first,
or we could just no, let's just stay in the Rashi chart and just see.
Okay, so
and just see what's aspect.
Can you see it?
No, not
okay.
really
so
well.
Aspects to the Lagna Lord or the ascendant?
Let's just say to the ascendant, yeah.
Okay, so we have it's a pretty good. We have a Gemini rising, Jupiter in the 7th in Sagittarius,
okay,
and Mercury in Pisces with the Sun in the 10th. So you have that Kendra aspect.
Okay,
the Sun is dominating to the Lagna with Mercury by square, and by trine we have the Moon in the 5th. In Libra.
All right. So what is the
this is a very nice chart. I mean, everything is very organized for this explanation.
Well, forget about the decans for now. Let's just what is the degree of Gemini? I said so we can get the Navamsa.
The Lagna, or you mean the Gemini as Mars? I mean Mercury as the Lagna Lord.
No, just the Lagna. Just the Lagna.
The Lagna is 17 degrees Gemini.
17 degrees Gemini. So it would be in the 6th.
I have the D9 here, by the way. Do you want me?
Yeah, sure, we can do that, but it would be in the 6th Navamsa of an air sign, right? So counting 6 from Libra, we get Pisces, okay? So that's Jupiter Navamsa. And then Dwadasamsa wise 17 degrees is going to be in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th Dwadasamsa. So 7 signs from Gemini is Sagittarius. So again, Jupiter. So I would say, according to Yavanajataka.
Oh yeah, man! God, you're good.
Yeah, I do this all the time. It's good to be able to do this.
D9 is going to be Pisces, and D12 is Sagittarius.
Yeah, so we would actually give more emphasis to Jupiter's aspect and position than to Mercury's, perhaps.
In this
or
case,
we might mix them. We might mix them a bit. Yeah, so Jupiter, I would say, will show more our thoughts, whereas Mercury might show just our bodily disposition. So Mercury in the 10th, we're doing this. It's a public video. We're making something that's
with the sun.
Put us in the
and
public
it's in
eye.
Pisces.
Yeah, so it's kind of nebulous, right? We started out real nebulous. Cool. Yeah. We got way off topic.
Very unorganized, very spiritual. Actually, this is actually a very good case of Mercury in Pisces. It's like we're applying the dynamism of our mind to really esoteric, mystical subjects.
Yeah, and I think it's with Neptune as well.
Something that usually is not taken so seriously by a mercurial type of mind. But, you know, at the same time, you have the sun in the 10th with it. So
Yeah.
there's a sort of authority to it from that mystic point of view. So it's a very good horror.
Sure. And then Jupiter aspecting is showing, and influencing is showing, that our thoughts are really, like our impetus to make this is really more philosophical and spiritual than scholarly. You know, we're not doing this in a scholarly way. We're doing this in a
especially through my jokes. Yeah.
Jupiterian jokes. You know, divergent subject matter, general, the big
and it's
picture.
Mercury in Pisces, so the jokes are going to be like weird from spiritual. And by the way, let me just say, we are in Saturn horror right now.
Okay.
So that's the planetary hour right now.
Okay, so Saturn horror, interesting. So, you know, that could also mean that we're not like as.
This is going to be a long video, a slow video.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's great. I like that we're doing this.
I like this. I like
we should just keep doing
astrology
this.
Is so fun, man.
Oh, it's the bee's knees.
Isn't it, man? You know, and when you have the planetary hours, I mean, it's really even more fun.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so now we can read about that Navamsa, right? If the Navamsa of of Pisces, right? The Navamsa of Pisces.
Navamsa of Pisces, yes.
So if a Navamsa of Pisces, the Greeks predict that he is thinking of immovable property, friends, his wife, or foreign travel.
Well, I'm thinking about foreign travel.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, about the conference in October. Yeah, I'm thinking about that.
Cool. Okay.
And we're thinking about friends. I mean, we were talking about our friends just now.
Oh, we were also talking about planetary friends and enemies before this video.
Oh,
right before this video.
Jesus Christ.
Wow. Yeah. Like we had a big conversation on it that could have been a video for you guys, but we didn't record it, unfortunately. Yeah. Maybe we'll do another video on that some other time. But yeah, wow, that's really cool. Immovable property? I don't know if that's came up, but
no, not really.
Okay, so then if a Dwadasamsa is, like I said, it was Sagittarius. We're thinking of quadrupeds such as horses. Well, I wasn't.
That would be like cars also, or like, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Equivalent. You know, are we thinking about quadrupeds?
I don't think so. But, you know, we can, of course, extend all this to just about anything. Like, I mean, what house is Sagittarius in this chart, right? It's the 7th house.
In the D1, it's 7th house with Jupiter in it.
Right. So, I mean, you know, 7th house deals with collaborations and things like we're doing now.
Well, maybe we are quadrupeds in the sense that we're two bipeds doing this video.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm a Sagittarius Lagna, so I don't know.
That's true. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, that maybe there's not a lot of confluence there, but
that's okay. But yeah, down here he says, right, the Dwadasamsa of any sign or the strong Navamsa which is used is mixed with another sign in which it is, right? So that's again the principle that we would take like Gemini and mix it with Sagittarius or Pisces.
This chart is applying to me more than you.
That's true. Yeah.
Because we're taking my location in Puerto Rico while you're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it's my location more than anything else. And, you know, thinking now, you know, I was thinking about transport. I was thinking about travel. So, yeah, I mean, the horse is very important for that. So I might agree with that in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sagittarius is about foreign travel, too, because it's Jupiter and it's shooting that bow and arrow and all that. So
that boner? I'm sorry, what did you say?
Bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow. Okay, I'm sorry.
Where the fuck does your mind go? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right, cool. So chapter 60. So now we get, oh my God, this is such a long chapter. I just had to skim through it because it's
me too. Don't worry about it.
But it's a great reference because what it is.
This is the type of reference you need to have when you're doing horror.
Yeah. So all the planets in the rising sign, with going through all 12 signs, and then all the planets conjunct in that sign while rising for every sign. So, you know, he gives the basic up here, and then he starts going, if the sun and moon, if the sun and Mars, and then he'll do, if the moon and Mars, if the moon and Mercury, everything. It's honestly, it's awesome, but you cannot absorb all this information.
You have to have an open book for this one.
Yeah, you just have to, I mean, you have to put it together too. It's quite obvious when you when you think about it, is just in terms of the basic principles of astrology, right? Like Sun and Jupiter, of gold or money. I would add of, also of power, of prestige, of king.
Which is gold and money, exactly.
Yeah, which is gold and money, so
and these
in
are
another
conjunctions
form.
in the Lagna, correct?
Yeah, because when he gets to Taurus, he does say in the ascendant, even though he didn't say it earlier. So I think it's implied. But you could apply this to anything. But the Lagna is very neutral. Obviously, it's not going to blend with like a bunch of other topics, like the other houses. Like if it's in the fifth
we don't
house,
have conjunctions in this horary in the Lagna, so we can just skip through it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't think we want to discuss each and every one of these because these are just particular arrangements that are going to apply in certain charts depending on the Prashna you do.
Yeah, and for those watching, like you just have to read this and like test it out with the horaries that you practice on, or the prajnas, right?
And as I've said before, horary is probably you should do it with an open book. Specifically, if you want to get really technical about it.
Well, actually, man, like in my experience, like having done it for a few years now, it's so simple that you really don't need an open book.
Well, yes, if you go by your intuition, yeah.
And just use the basic principles, right?
Yeah,
like I don't need to consult this to know what Jupiter means.
Exactly.
Neither do you.
But sometimes you will get things that are not logical, just as sometimes you might get a yoga that does not make sense, but it.
Absolutely. When I go and look up things for horary, it's usually for lost objects, because that is the most obtuse kind of horary. Because but man, that really works if you follow it through. That really works, and you can find. What's important is if the person finds the thing, not if you got it exactly. So like one time I told somebody, because Mars was in Gemini and they were looking for some money they had misplaced. I had just told them somewhere near fire, so maybe like in your kitchen, in a drawer, because mutable signs are inside or underneath something. And I said maybe where there's like I was thinking maybe where there's like multiple of Mars things, so like knives, burners on a stove, and so on. And yeah, sure enough, he found it like right around there. It was really amazing. And I didn't get it exactly, but I got it enough that he could find it, and that's what's important. So anyway, okay. Yeah, this is a pretty long chapter because it goes through so many combinations, like I just mentioned. So please get a copy of this, and just, if you're interested in this chapter, just read it for yourself.
By the way, let's just tell people that you can get this book for free on Google. We haven't even.
Yeah. I guess not.
Said that in other videos. I mean, you can download this in archive.com. I mean, it's
okay, cool. I got it from somebody before it was on the internet, so I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah, and then at the end here, he just gives a few basic things, like if a planet is very strong, then the things the person's thinking about like work out very well, and the opposite, so on. Yeah, so that's it, really. Okay, so then chapter 61. This is cool. This is something you don't see very often. He's linking the nativity to the question. So if the ascendant of the nativity, right, is in the ascendant at the time of the question, he's thinking of these things, health and care of his body. And if it's aspected by a blazing planet, I think a strong planet is what this means, right? It's the appearance of good. If by a malefic, it's deprivation and loss. And then he goes through the ascendant of the nativity in the hypogee, in the descendant, in the midheaven, and then he starts talking about some other things. So
wait, this Prashna, the ascendant, my ascendant, is in the descendant. So it's number 3.
So he's thinking of banishment from his country, always being on the road, misfortune for his body or for his wife, and of splitting up the wealth he has collected. Ouch. Sorry, dude.
Well, I was thinking about traveling, so that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that works. Again, you got to take this all with a grain of salt. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, it's quite accurate.
My ascendant in that would be in the hypogee, which would be, so I would be thinking of position, wealth, money, stability,
Yeah, you were thinking about money before we started
meeting with
recording.
friends, mistresses, and those who have been abroad. So yeah, some of this stuff, sure. Yeah, we were talking about money, right? I was bringing that up about making money and stuff.
Yeah, because you were talking to me that you had $1 million to invest and you didn't know where to invest them, and I said, "Man, you just got to spend it on drugs." And yeah, then we started.
Yeah, which I guess what you'll be supplying because you're South American, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm actually American.
I'm just kidding. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
No, but cocaine here is very normal. So yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm from Albuquerque.
That's no joke. That's no
Breaking
joke.
Bad and all the meth. I'm from Albuquerque.
No, actually, it's less glamorous than that. Like it always is. You know.
I know. Yeah.
But cocaine is very, very accessible here, everywhere.
Wow.
But that's how you control people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anyway,
Yavanajataka.
A sign is regarded as strong because it has come to the place which it occupied at the nativity. Well, this basically means that if your ascendant is also the ascendant of the question chart, then
it's strong.
Because otherwise, it can't be any other way. Yeah. But this
if you had the hora of the planetary hour of the Lord of your Lagna, and the Lagna is the same in the horary as it is in the nativity, it's a very, straight on, that's the synchronicity you need to really be sure about the question, the answer of the question being posed, in my opinion.
Yeah, that happened for a consultation chart I pulled for a client where it was the exact same ascendant. And so I knew that this was, very, very accurate. That was one of the ways I knew. There was some other things too. But anyway, so it's basically kind of saying like, again, like if the sign is not in the place occupied by nativity, or if it's occupied by an enemy and its lord is overcome and so on, like, it's kind of going into this idea that you can actually, what it seems to be subtly implying is that like you can take wherever the ascendant of the nativity falls in terms of houses, right? And take that as an important house, right?
And we just discussed this in the previous shlokas. The idea of the Lagna from the nativity being in the different kendras.
Yes, right. And then you can apply it to anything. But then it's also saying you can look at like the lords and how they are in comparison to the nativity. So it's getting very intricate. I really don't do this very often, but I think it's actually a powerful tool for sure.
Yeah, you just make it. I mean, this would be like a secondary significator of self in addition to the Lagna Lord of the horror in terms of where the person is or what is he thinking,
Yeah. So, and then this is cool, right? If the sign occupied by, well, actually before that, sorry, he says here, if the sign occupied by the moon at the nativity is in the ascendant, one should know that there is an influence, but by force. So I don't really get what that means, but it seems here
probably it's the idea of the mind being there, and it's more relevant.
This is considered inauspicious, right? If the sign occupied by the moon is in the ascendant, one should find that he is thinking of toil, misfortune, and undertaking for whatever reason. So
maybe it's the fear, that you're coming to an astrologer with an important question, and it's your mind is there, and it's very, the moon is a baby and he's right there in the Lagna in the middle of things. I don't know.
Perhaps, yeah. But then he goes through, if the sign in the nativity occupied by the sun is in the ascendant. So again, just to be clear, this isn't if the sun is in the ascendant in the Prashna. This is if your sun sign or your Mercury sign or your moon sign, Mars sign, whatever, is the sign rising in the Prashna. So I don't think you have any planets in Gemini, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, I don't either. So, damn, it's too bad. Yeah, we didn't get the best horary for all these chapters, but we got a good horary for general stuff. So anyway, yeah, you can just, if you went through this and stuff, if the sun, if the sun is blah blah blah, he's thinking of failure in his action or his lost money, and this is because this is not because the sun necessarily is negative or brings these things, but I think this is probably because the sun is like somewhat malefic, and the fact that if the person is thinking about their sun sign, right, it's probably because they're distressed. But not always, right? It could also be in the right context. It could just mean they're thinking about their career. If they ask a question about their career and their public life and what they really love to do in life, then you see that the sun sign is rising in the prajna, then, you know, you have to interpret it like that. You don't want to interpret it like they're saying here. You want to interpret it in the context. So that in that case, you would say, oh yeah, you're really thinking about, the person's really, really thinking about and focused on like what they're here to do in the world, like what their purpose is, what the kind of
I can
that
see
kind
that.
of a thing. So in juxtaposition to their job, perhaps in that case, right? So I think we can just kind of skirt through this, right? It's pretty simple. It's pretty obvious. Unfortunately, we don't have the nodes, right? But
that's something we haven't seen.
Yeah, but I think that we can apply all of this stuff to the nodes. We just would have to look at later texts or use our own understanding, right? If the sign occupied by Ketu is rising, the person is thinking of, philanthropy, escapism, mysticism, confusion, rejection. If the sign occupied by Rahu is rising, the person is thinking of like obsession, desire, seeking some kind of unity or higher thing, or whatever, just all the node stuff.
Obsession and introspection, or obsession and extrospection.
Or whatever.
And you mentioned the nodes, and we're going to talk about this in the conclusion of this series, but the nodes are nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, they're nowhere. It's
nowhere to be seen.
It's
not
great
I think he hasn't even talked about eclipses, if I'm not wrong.
I haven't seen it yet. If he has, I don't remember that. Yeah. So it's unfortunate.
And then we come to chapter 62, which is like the clusterfuck.
This is so freaking weird. Yeah.
I mean, this is probably like the weirdest chapter so far.
When we got to this chapter, I immediately got this vibe, like several shlokas in, that this wasn't written by the same person.
Yeah, very probably.
Immediately. I was just like, I don't even know what this is. Who the hell's writing this? But I
think the whole horror part, look at me horror, the whole Prashna part, I mean, it's all, like I've said at the beginning of the video, I mean, if this is as old as it gets, Prashna things shouldn't be here. And if they are, then it's not that old. I mean...
But what I've noticed is there's a trend in Indian astrological texts, and perhaps in Indian thinking from a certain era, where like the Indians were very meticulous. They were very Virgo, like extremely Virgo about, writing out all these possible permutations and combinations. And you just don't find this in most of the Hellenistic and Persian texts. Those guys were
lost, or probably because, they're not there.
Well, I think it's just a different way of approaching it. Not that one is better or worse or anything. It's just like the Indians got really mathematical. They got really technical in a lot of ways. They got really obsessed with the combinations, whereas like the Persians were more interested in just giving you the basics of it, like the abstract, like these are the principles, now apply them. So it's just it's really, I just love seeing the juxtaposition. It's fascinating to me. And, I like both. I like the Pisces and the Virgo. So you got to have both. All right. So 62 is basically on how to determine minerals and rocks and gemstones, I guess, in a prajna. And it just is, this is totally crazy. This is I do not understand.
Okay. Let's start from the
point of this.
Let's start. What he does is he goes through the schemes of Dhatu, Mula, Jiva, and for those who study Jyotish, they might hear of this. He gives a scheme for Dhatu, which is minerals. Dhatus can also mean tissues, like the Sapta Dhatus, which is a term from Ayurvedic medicine, where you divide the tissues of the body into 7 different types.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Mula is a nakshatra, but mula really means roots, so it's referring to vegetable things, plants, fruits, even maybe vegetables in that sense, because they're also plants. And Jiva, well, Jiva is Jiva. It's like the individualized consciousness in a way. And that's basically animals. So his scheme is interesting because his scheme, he gives Sun and Mars for Dhatu, Saturn and Mercury for Mula, and Jupiter and Venus for Jiva, which is at the beginning of the chapter, right? And, you kind of see some similarities there. The idea that Dhatu or mineral are related to Kshatriya fiery planets, Pitta planets, Mars and Sun. Mula, vegetables, are related to Nutor planets, which are Saturn and Mercury. And the Jiva are Jupiter and Venus, which are the benefics, okay? And then he talks about the moon, which says it varies, but then in later shlokas, he talks about it as a Jiva planet. So we're going to put it as a Jiva.
That's right, yeah.
So, what's wrong with this? This is a scheme very different from the one Parashara gives. Parashara gives another scheme in, I don't know, I think it's chapter 67, I don't know. But it's there because I just looked it up from another book, not directly from Parashara. But Parashara gives for Dhatu, Mars, Saturn, Moon, and Rahu. For Mula, Sun and Venus. And for Jiva, Ketu, Jupiter, and Mercury. So, I mean, he basically changes everything except that Mars remains Dhatu and Jupiter remains Jiva. So we're getting a different scheme of Dhatu, Mula, Jiva significators from the one we're going to get in Parashara. Just like we got a different planetary scheme before in the first chapter we saw.
For enemies and friends,
Yeah. Just as we saw certain differences in terms of techniques in Chadvala and Ashtaka Varga. So once again, we're seeing like maybe the genesis of techniques that are going to develop further down the road into other things. And, that's where we start. And then he goes on with the calculations that are just, man, I try to do them. First of all, he uses Johnny, which is very interesting for categories. And Johnny in modern Jyotish is used in a nakshatra context.
No, wait, hold on.
What?
This isn't yoni in terms of reproductive organs. No.
No, but Johnny here, the word he uses for like the category.
Yeah.
In like modern Jyotish, it's associated in the nakshatra context of the animal related to the nakshatras.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Johnny was a gonad, was a genital?
Well, yoni is a word for like female genitalia, but its original meaning is actually as it's used here, like as a source.
Okay, like a Bharani type thing. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was reading this, I was like, wait, is he talking, like, was he talking about, like, and then I was like, no, okay, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that Johnny is used for your animal, and that's very important for sexual chemistry with the nakshatra compatibility technique of Puta.
Yeah, which is supposedly a very powerful technique.
I like it. Oh, man,
I've never had the opportunity to test it, but
I think it works. Yeah, I think it works.
It would. Yeah, I believe that it would.
But you have to obviously take it in consideration with other techniques. And then he starts talking about how to determine like
it's weird.
Not only mineral stuff, but whether, I mean, it's the idea of whether the thing that we are addressing is either mineral, plant-based, or animal-based, which are the whole categories of the whole reality that surrounds us in this Maya in terms of, material stuff. And then he goes on and he talks about like, this is where it gets weird because he says, you use the order starting with Dhatu from the sun, where the sun is in odd signs, and you end up with Jiva, and then when the moon, you start with even, and then you go to like in even signs where the moon is, you start. It's like that difference you get from the Balaria Vashtas, where you start with Vala and you end with Mritra, and then you start with Mritra and end with Vala, the next one. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that in terms of the Rashis of Dhatu Mula Jiva, and then Jiva Mula Dhatu, and then Dhatu Mula Jiva, and then Jiva Mula Dhatu, so on and so forth as the Chakri as the Rashi chakra goes on. And then he does like a weird calculation, and you can see it there, where he says that you have to, like in even signs, you have to take the number of Navamsas that the sun has traversed.
Yeah, I've got it
then,
highlighted here, but man, like this is where this type of thing at this point in my astrology journey, this does not interest me. I think this is honestly ridiculous.
Me neither.
Think that it makes,
if it's not
very
simple,
little sense.
Don't do it.
I'm sorry, but like, and you know, this is maybe my ninth lord in the sixth with Rahu talking, but like there are so many things in these traditional texts that are clearly,
my ninth lord is with Ketu, so yeah.
Okay, are in the 12th, right? So are clearly innovations, and to me, it's like I just think these things are overrated. They're not sacred by any means, and sometimes they're even stupid. You know, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And like I don't care what culture it is. This is not like a cultural thing, but
I mean, I would like to read it in the original Sanskrit.
Yeah, that would be nice, because then maybe
that's how I would approach this. I would like to read it in the original Sanskrit and really like come to the nitty gritty, because this is something that you have to sit down and crunch the numbers.
I even think Shadbala is kind of stupid, you know. And
you know, Shadbala,
like that's a controversial statement, but it's so complicated that to calculate it by hand would take longer than calculating and reading the chart.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
something's not right to me.
Digbala and Shtanabala are very important, and even Drikbala, that people don't even talk about that one. But the other ones, you know, are Chesta is important also. But the idea of all the computations, I understand what you mean, and I can do that. But I mean, this is not Chatbala. This is another. We're talking about something else. You know, here I think it's. I would recommend. I mean, this is the type of chapter that we really need to master Sanskrit to understand it. And even Pingree starts writing a lot of. Look, there are a lot of parentheses,
question marks, and parentheses.
Yeah, question marks. There are a lot of, and I mean, there are a lot of words where you kind of get specific plants, and that's amazing. He could get all those definitions. I mean, that's really hard.
And so the text is kind of going through like these very specific minerals and plants. So in this respect, this chapter becomes useful for
lost items maybe, or specific things related to these.
Yeah, so like here in 14, Mars is cinnabar, Mercury red arsenic and yellow arsenic, Jupiter sulfuret, I don't know what that is, Venus betel nuts and candied sugar.
It's amazing he could translate all these words, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, it's I mean, great.
These are not, this is not easy. I mean,
no.
How do you know those words mean that in English?
I like this part too. This is very good for medical astrology, potentially, like for herbs. If Mars, they say the plant is hot and acidic.
Yes.
If sun, bitter, sharp, and poisonous. If moon, cold, sweet, and so on. And I just
this more or less
love that.
This more or less relates to the flavors of the planets in a way. They kind of differentiate. For example, the idea of Jupiter usually are sweet things and oily things like fat, but here, you know, Venus is associated with sweet things, while Venus is sometimes sour things, you know.
Right, Jupiter, they're saying Jupiter is acidic fruits like lemons and limes, perhaps. But that makes sense too, because those increase the pH balance in your body. And like, so Jupiter is all about like creating balance and harmony within a system, whereas Venus is more about delight and pleasure. So Jupiter really brings in the equilibrium. And in that sense, Jupiter is going to be more like people that do a Jupiter diet are going to be the people that are like, oh, I'm doing like a probiotic diet or like raw vegan or like
omega-3 acids.
But people doing a Venus diet are going to be like, I'm just going to enjoy food. I'm going to eat and make very good food. And I don't really care as much. It's how it makes me feel. And I've often noticed that on this sort of side note here, like that eating like really good just tasty food has uplifted me profoundly.
Of course.
But
Hello.
right, and that
Diet
would
is
be
everything. Yeah.
and that would be a Venusian thing. But that what I've done, like more the dietary kind of path of Jupiter, it also helped me, but it helped me over like a longer term kind of thing. Like when I did a khichdi fast and I did a lot of Ayurvedic cooking and eating, it was like a long-term thing that was very systematic, right? But Venus is more that moment of like, just like indulging in that moment. And in medicine, we can link this to medicine too, where Jupiter represents more human types of medicine, like Ayurveda or modern medicine, where it's like a systematic scientific approach. But Venus represents things like faith healing and sort of like shamanic healing and miraculous sort of journeys. And even I would say like drug healing through drugs, like
Hallucinogenics, yeah.
Yeah, like Venus doesn't represent hallucinogenics, but in the context of medicine, the less linear path.
Yeah, one might say that Rahu would do that, but yeah.
Well, Rahu, some astrologers, like Ryan actually said this, and it's arguably from Gemini extrapolated. I agree. I'm bringing his name up because I agree, actually, Ryan Kurtzak. Sorry, I just had a moment where I was thinking about like how when I don't bring up people's names, it's usually because I don't agree with them in these videos. But I agree with Ryan where he was saying that Rahu can represent like drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs and
venoms, yeah.
Yeah, like even chemotherapy and stuff like that, which I'm not a fan of at all. But sometimes it does work for the person. So
don't say that. We're gonna lose our sponsors.
Shit. I forgot we were sponsored by all the cancer research centers across.
We're sponsored by Viagra.
Oh yeah, and Viagra.
Let's fix that before we fix other things. Viagra.
Anyway, all right. Yeah. Okay. So, but
let me tell you another thing. There's another debate in terms of these Ayurvedic techniques that sometimes there's a debate between whether Mars or Sun is hot or bitter food. And that's something that goes on. Some people say that Mars is hot things, like spicy things, and others say it's bitter, and that's the same for Sun. And in this part, poisonous herbs are sometimes alluded to Mars also because they can cause accidents and death.
Or Saturn too. I mean, Saturn would be.
Yeah, but Saturn is more of astringent tastes. And like it says here, like really ugly things,
I mean,
like things that you wouldn't necessarily eat because they're rotten. You know what I mean? Mars is like it's hidden because.
Let me just say this, like from just a practical perspective, not thinking about the shlokas.
Because Saturn would be like you dying from the poison.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the accident. That would be worse,
But just from a practical perspective of what I've observed in my own life, Mars and Sun are both fiery, and I would give the more subtle fiery stuff to the Sun and the more in-your-face fiery stuff to Mars. So I would give Mars like really spicy foods, like really sour.
Which I love, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I'm hungry now.
But I would give the Sun more like subtle things. Like I would give ginger to the Sun, not Mars.
That's nice. That's very beautiful. I
would give Mars might rule like a really spicy kimchi. Sun would rule maybe a more what is another fermented food that's less intense, like
blue cheese, kombucha
or that. God damn it! It's just cabbage. It's just freaking cabbage.
Cabbage? Oh, sauerkraut? No.
Yeah, sauerkraut. Yeah, sauerkraut.
Okay.
You could give that. You might give that to the Sun, right? That's a lot less intense than kimchi.
Bratwurst mit sauerkraut.
Yeah, that sounds good. Anyway, so that's kind of how I would approach it. I would see like, is it super bitter? Right, that might be more
like
Mars.
Coffee, like black coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, is it less bitter? Like the Sun, like so broccoli rabe might be Mars, whereas I don't know what's a less bitter. Maybe asparagus would be more solar. I don't know. Just kind of a logical approach to it. It doesn't have to be one way or the other.
But let's continue with the chapter.
Okay. Oh wait, are we reading a chapter here?
Whatever. We're just talking about the different plants, different tastes. Then he goes on and moves to like
freaking clothes. And this is interesting down here. Clothing. Again, another useful predictive thing to look at, right? Mars is our clothes are for armor and so on. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on all this stuff because it just gets ridiculously complex, but it is very useful in just basic respects. I don't know, are there any shlokas you wanted to address?
No, not really, man. I really skimmed through this chapter precisely
Yeah.
because I didn't understand the technique it started with. Because it's
Oh,
not clear. And as I said, it's important to get the Sanskrit clear to understand these. And if we could understand that, I guess
yeah.
this would be an appropriate Prashna technique. But since we don't have the actual technique of multiplying the number of Navamshas the sun has traversed by 108, and then the product is added to the Navamsha above the horizon in Lagna, and then you have to divide it by 3. I mean, that's the whole process you have to do to identify all these
Yeah.
things.
And then, well, okay, yeah, and it's beyond our understanding at this point. But then he goes into like the category of humans and talks about what each of the planets represent. And I feel like he's just repeating a lot of the stuff he repeated earlier with
Oh yeah, and let me tell you, in chapter 61, I didn't mention this, I forgot, but in the previous chapters where we discussed the planets in Lagna in terms of its relation to the natal positions, he also discussed this in chapters 53, 54, and 57 before. So, there's another type of clue that maybe this part is either added or
I think you're onto something, yeah.
but yeah.
But then he goes through the signs, and then he goes through the planets in the signs, and once again, it's just a lot of repetition. Only he focuses a bit more on animals, but not always. Like he talks about rhinoceroses and camels and cows and bulls, but then Jupiter, a wealthy man, or wandering bards. It's like, what, and I don't know. I understand the organization, I guess, but it's very chaotic and kind of random. So we're going to just skip through all this because you got to just read it for yourself and be amazingly confused like we were.
And in chapter 63 is basically
sorry,
like an addendum to the 62nd chapter.
Yeah, it's just an addendum. So, he gives these strange techniques, these strange multipliers for, I don't even know, determining all this stuff. I don't even really want to think about it. And then
this is a very bad analysis. We really don't want to talk about this. Just skip it.
Just read it for yourself. I don't have anything else to say. I think that's pretty much it.
And these are used to like verify the thoughts of the person.
Yeah.
It's very funny. We just finished, and the planetary hour just changed.
Nice. So it changed to Jupiter.
It's at least where I am. I don't know if it's this. Is it the same planetary hour for you? No,
it wouldn't be. It would be different. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what else can we say about these chapters? They're horary, and we still have a little more to go to finish this book of Yavanajataka. So 64 for the next video.
Yeah, and I'm excited for 64. It looks interesting, and the next few chapters are I think they're more usable than chapter 6.
Yes, I was excited for 64 when it came out back in 96.
96, yeah. Yeah, you were excited before other people were excited.
Yeah, but I also was excited for, do you remember Dreamcast? You don't remember?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, that was cool, but that lasted like a year.
Oh, that was sad. Yeah, there were some great games on there.
Yeah, the fighting games. But yeah, I mean, yeah, next video we start discussing, and we're almost finished with Yavanajataka.
Cool. So yeah, let me stop the share and we'll just conclude. All right. Well, so that's it for those chapters. So stay tuned for next time, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out Fernando's channel as well in the description section. Go to both of our websites and just purchase all of our readings and all that kind of thing. And
yeah,
we'll see you next time. All right. Thanks, man.